Hello everybody, here we are tonight as I give my thoughts on the St. Louis Blues hiring Jim Montgomery as their head coach just days after the Boston Bruins gave him the boot. So before we get started with it, please make sure to subscribe if you're new to me or hockey, whatever the case may be. Being said, let's get on into it. So coaching can be a weird thing where things are going really well for you and if you feel like you're probably relatively secure in your job before not long after that you end up getting fired. And in this case, of course, Jim Montgomery saw that kind of happen to him. He had 2 good seasons with the Bruins and then he ended up having a slow start this year, of course marred by some playoff failures too before this, where he ends up, of course, not matching up with what the organization kind of expected and gets the boot. And then just 5 days later, the St. Louis Blues go out there and they hire him, which is kind of funny. But anyway, you have 2 talking points here where on one hand, you realize that the Blues only gave Drew Bannister something like 20 games to try to make this team be what they've been in recent years, which is a playoff side, kind of for like a decade or longer, but that's not a very long time. And you wonder if he probably should have got more time. But then on the other hand, you realize that the Blues went out and got a former Jack Adams winning head coach. And it brings up the discussion of, by getting him, are they going to be able to go out there and become a playoff side that's capable of getting a lot of wins? And that's really the big question here, because with St. Louis, they haven't made the playoffs in back-to-back years, which is weird watching this team growing up and seeing them be a regularly good side. And it looks like they probably might miss for a 3rd straight year, but in a very small 1-game sample size, they looked better, of course, with having Montgomery as head coach, as they picked up a nice 5-2 statement win against the New York Rangers. And there are reasons to be positive about this team. Their top 6 seems pretty good. We talked about that in the season preview, which seems like months ago, probably was to some degree. They have got Robert Thomas that is coming back, which is part of their top 6. He has missed about half of their games. He had a fractured ankle, I do believe. So getting probably one of, if not your best player back in the lineup is a great thing. And this is an organization that has got a pretty good winning culture, knows what it takes. And that's a good thing for Jim Montgomery, because he's never really had to be in a super bad culture when it comes to that, in looking at his time with the Dallas Stars, Boston Bruins, and now St. Louis Blues. Not like he was in, a situation with the Coyotes or maybe the Florida Panthers before they were able to get those winning ways going in a bit, or in a fashion, I should say. So those are all reasons you could say, oh, this is why the team could get back on track, especially after he helped them get that 3-goal win over the Blue Shirts. But then there are a lot of negatives with this team. This organization, of course, has not been able to win in recent years to the degree that they want, and a large part of that has been Jordan Binnington struggling in net. He's continued to have an issue here for this side, and then on top of that too, looking at special teams, their play is not inspiring, as they are a bottom 3rd side on the power play and then on the PK. That is not great, especially when you're having a goalie that can't seem to find that rhythm that he had on their way to winning the Stanley Cup back in 2019. And they are also in a division that looks pretty strong. Not saying the Atlantic wasn't strong, because certainly you have good teams like the Florida Panthers in recent years, Toronto Maple Leafs, even the Tampa Bay Lightning in this time. But I don't think that the Central is just a rollover division. There are 3 or 4 really good teams that aren't going to be really looking to relinquish their control over the Central anytime soon. So it'd be hard to kind of move up while you have these other sides that are in win now mode, even to the degree maybe of like the Winnipeg Jets that are very aggressive. And then to kind of pointing this out, circling back to the goalie talk, you're not going to have the 1A, 1B punch of Jeremy Swayman and Linus Ullmark. I know they're both not having the greatest years this season, as they are kind of feeling the role of a starter for both sides. Ullmark, of course, in Ottawa, and then Swayman of Boston with that 8-year extension. But when they were together, they were really, really good. That's not there anymore. You don't have the luxury of that. So I think there are some legitimate challenges here holding back Jim in the moment. But I do think that he wasn't necessarily brought in to bring this team up to a 110-point pace right off the bat or anything like that. This is a team that I think has a long-term vision. So my thoughts are kind of this in regards to the Montgomery hire. The Blues saw something they didn't like with Drew Bannister in the first quarter of the season, and they saw a guy that was on the market in Montgomery that was one of, if not the most successful coach in the time that he was in charge of the Bruins, most wins in the NHL in that time, I should say, and they wanted to go out there and get him. This is an organization that likes winning. Who doesn't? But for the Blues, they've come to expect it over the years, and they want to try to get back to that point. I'm not saying they'll get there right away. They have got multitude of contracts that I'm not a huge fan of, decent amount of money, guys that are on deals running through this season, 2 seasons past that, even 3 seasons beyond this. Jordan Binnington's kind of got a while before his deal's off the books. You might have to buy out some of these contracts. You might have to figure out a way to break this off with some trades and whatnot. I don't know. But I do think that if Jim is able to go out there and be a good coach like people feel he is, he would be able to improve some of these players that are struggling a little bit. Really, I think, in all honesty here, if he's able to get Binnington to play better, they could be a much better side, because Binnington, of course, is a The forward group gives me enough confidence where they should be good enough to go out there and score enough goals to win. And if they are able to be good on the PK, or at least average, I don't see a reason why they couldn't at least be in contention for a wildcard spot. And again, I think this is something where you see a coach that's already had success in 2 other teams, and you're thinking, okay, why not roll the dice and see if things work out here for us? And that's why they gave him a 5-year contract. I'm excited to see how this pans out, whether or not St. Louis is good in that time, if Jim's even there by the end of this 5-year deal. But I do agree with what a lot of people have to say. This feels like a big move for the organization. They moved on from Craig Berube, which had hurt, and they've kind of felt like a group that's in the middle flux, if you will, trying to get back to what they could have been, maybe even get better as they had regressed in recent years. And by getting Jim Montgomery, they can at least say, well, we got a coach that won the President's Trophy, that had back-to-back really high-quality seasons, and if we can get a little bit of that going for us, then we're going to be all right. So I think that if this goes well again, Montgomery's legacy will be highly improved because he will have done well in Dallas, did really well in Boston, and then improved the St. Louis team that got stuck in the mud there for a little bit. But we'll see here, because I think one thing that's fortunate for him is this team has never really bottomed out. So maybe he's able to jump on the train just before things get a little bit too crazy. So anyway, what are your thoughts on the whole situation here? Do you think the Jim Montgomery hire was a good decision for the St. Louis Blues? Or do you think that they should have given Drew Bannister more time, or kind of something in the middle there? Let me know down below in the comments. Also, please make sure to like this video if you enjoyed it. Subscribe if you're new. Everybody stay safe. Have a great night. And you go Hawk, you're all right. Goodbye, Brigadiers and Brigadettes. This is your captain signing off. Have a great night.